Hey guys, it's Ty from gamesfromthefront.com. Thanks for joining me for this video review of The Greatest Day, Sword, Juno, and Gold Beaches. This is another outstanding entry into the Grand Tactical series. It's the first volume in the Battle for Normandy. There'll be later games that focus on Omaha Beach and Utah beaches. GTS has developed into a very mature system. It's been 7 or so years since The Devil's Cauldron came out. It's been another 4 years since Where Eagles Dare came out. And each step of the way, you've seen refinements and enhancements, streamlining in some cases, more in-depth rules in other cases. But really, I would start off by saying that The Greatest Day is a very refined example of the GTS system that adds a lot of historical aspects to it. Now, if you've watched my recent Where Eagles Dare review, there's a lot of elements in that review that you could extend to this package. Most prominently, the scale, again, for GTS, and the level of detail that scale provides, again, shines through here in The Greatest Day. On top of that, the historical touches, and I'll probably get into some of those a little bit more later in this review, but the historical touches that have been added on top of the core rules for GTS really make this a great wargaming experience, one that's rich with history, rich with narrative, rich with gameplay decisions that need to be made. And I think most people who are interested in D-Day in particular, in the GTS system also in particular, shouldn't hesitate and run out and pick up this game while it's available. Now, I've already spent some time with my copy of the game, so it's already punched and bagged and put into bins and sorted. So I'm not going to really turn this into a components review or spend too much time talking about the components. Anyone familiar with GTS, either through ownership or following them on the internet, you'll know that the component quality and design quality around the components of The Greatest Day and GTS overall are outstanding, and they've won numerous awards. They're great to look at. They're great to hold and use in the game system. If you're interested in kind of an unboxing type video, Todd Reed recently released a video that goes pretty in depth and spends a good amount of time looking at the contents of the box. And so I direct you that way if you're looking for something a little bit more along those lines. While I didn't spend much time with it for my Where Eagles Dare review, I did want to talk a little bit more about the GTS system in the context of The Greatest Day, just to give you a better idea of why I think it's such an excellent system. It can easily be said, and is often first said, that GTS uses a chip pull mechanic as part of its core mechanics around the game system. And while that's certainly true, it also really only scratches the surface of what's available and kind of the detail that goes behind what would otherwise be thought of as a simple chip pull mechanic. And so what I've done here is I've actually pulled out a sample of the types of chits that you'll find in the game. I'm not going to get into the mechanics themselves, but I do want to point out that sure, while it's a chit pull mechanic system, you actually have different types of chits. And so from left to right, there's a division activation chit. In the middle, there's a direct command chit. And then the right-hand side, in this particular case, there's a formation activation chit. Each of those chits certainly define which units are available for activation, as you'd expect in a chip pull mechanic. But what really makes the GTS system stand out and different from other chip pull systems is that each chit acts a little bit differently. And so you have different decisions to make, different actions that you can take for a division activation chit, for example, versus a formation activation chit. And on top of that, on top of the way that the individual chits work, that makes a little bit more richer experience with GTS. The way that the chits interact with each other, the way that you can use a direct command chit to follow up a formation activation chit, or how a formation activation chit can supplement or take away, in some cases, from a division activation chit, in the way that those works. The long and short of it is that you certainly have a chit pull mechanic with GTS, but you have one that's a lot more richer, that leads to a lot better, a lot more enjoyable decision making, and requires a higher level of strategic and tactical thinking. And I think that makes for a richer gameplay experience. As I was saying earlier, the Greatest Day, I think, represents a very mature product, a very mature system for the Grand Tactical series, and it's very much reflected in the exclusive rules and the scenario book that comes with the game. First of all, you'll notice that these are actually two separate books, and in prior iterations of the Grand Tactical series, you would find the scenarios embedded as part of the exclusive rules. Well, in this particular case, there are so many scenarios, and they require so much detail as far as setup goes that it actually requires a separate book. And the scenario book is quite a sight to behold. I think it comes out somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 or 70 pages. I forget the exact count, but just rest assured that there is a ton of gameplay in this package. And I think especially compared to perhaps Where Eagles Dare, the amount of gameplay for the Greatest Day that you'll find in the box compares very favorably. The level of complexity around the scenarios, from the most simplest learning scenarios to the partial campaign games, the advanced and advanced scenarios, and then even the campaign games themselves. There's a lot of options here for gameplay for players. You know, one of the most common obstacles or roadblocks that people throw up with GTS if they're thinking about buying the game is, you know, the game is so big, I'm not going to get to the table. Well, in this particular case, there are tons of smaller one map scenarios. A lot of the maps are printed on the back, and so I think there really is, it shouldn't be a question of whether you're going to get any enough gameplay value from what's in the package. There's tons of scenarios there. And of course, the highlight, the top show in all of this is the campaign game. And even for just the limited British and Canadian beaches, the campaign game still is quite large. You know, by some estimates, I think from the designer, that it's twice as dense or twice as large as the campaign game for Where Eagles Dare and Devil's Cauldron combined. So for those of you like me who are looking for that monster game experience with a lot of detail, a lot of historical aspects, a lot of historical narrative, this campaign game is certainly going to deliver. On the exclusive rules front, the Greatest Day has taken a little bit of a novel approach and has incorporated rules from the 2.0 version of the GTS core rules into the exclusive rules. And so as players are making the transition from 1.1 to 2.0 of the GTS core rules, they're first going to want to look here to pick up the actual changes for 2.0. First of all, I'll say that many of the rule changes are welcome. In many cases, they streamline play. In other cases, they enhance play, meaning it cleans up some of the rules, especially around the independent formations. There's some streamlining around the assault rules. MMP and the designer are developing a new rule book that will take the 2.0 rules out of this exclusive rules set, but in the box, this is where you'll find them. As I was saying earlier, the Greatest Day is a very mature product for the GTS system. I think that's reflected here in the exclusive rule book, or the book for the exclusive rules. You'll find a lot of play examples and hints that are very cleanly laid out. You'll find commentary from the designer and some of the play testers who are giving you a sense on how the rules are not only written up in text, but also would visually appear on the map. So an excellent product that I think represents, again, a very mature approach to some of the things that have been learned over the last couple games. As I was saying earlier, the Greatest Day is another example of a GTS system or GTS game that really delivers on a historical narrative, historical detail, that brings a richness to the gameplay that I really don't seem to find at other scales or in other rule sets. For this Greatest Day, you'll find that probably in the most clear example, which is around the naval sequence of play. And the naval sequence of play in the Greatest Day handles not only offshore naval units and their bombardment activities, but also the beach landings. And so I've pulled out a map for Gold Beach. It's just on this 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It serves as an overlay on the main game maps, and naturally for D-Day, or at least after the pair drop landings on the night before, kicks off June 6th, 1944, for the landings on the 3 different beaches, Gold, Sword, and Juno. And what's great about this is, yes, certainly other D-Day games have landing sequences, certainly at the scale that most of them are at. They're much more simpler than what you'll find in the Greatest Day. But as I've said before, it's a level of detail and it's a scale that I find really enjoyable. And what's great about the landing sequence for the Greatest Day is that I think it adds, you can almost think of it as a mini game, right? Each beach is a little bit different. Juno behaves a little bit different than Sword. Sword is a little bit different than Gold. Each one of them has different restrictions in terms of how easy it is to land on the beach, the units that are being faced by the landing units. And so it's a really great addition to the game, and certainly one that you would expect for D-Day. But I think the highlight here is that it's really well done, it's enjoyable to play, and actually has a meaningful outcome or meaningful impact on the rest of the game if you're playing the campaign scenario. On top of the beach landing sequence, you'll find a lot of other touches or addition to the game rules through the exclusive rules that add to that historical flavor, whether it's mulberries, whether it's the Royal Commandos and the way that they're kind of a unique type of unit, air power, divisional trucks. All of these things, again, add to that historical flavor and historical enjoyment. It's one of the most important aspects to me as a player in what I want to get out of the game. For as great as it is overall, that isn't to say that the Greatest Day doesn't have some flaws. There are a couple that come to mind from a broad sense. First of all, the rollout of the 2.0 rules was handled in a somewhat suspect manner, somewhat sloppily. You know, the 2.0 rules are in the exclusive rules, but in the box is the 1.0 rules. I think it caused a lot of confusion for players new to the system, and even some of us who have been playing for a while. And my understanding is that that's a decision that MMP made to roll it out this way. What's interesting is that they've since reversed course, if that's the case, and are currently developing a 2.0 rulebook, which we hope to get into players' hands, or we hope we see in players' hands shortly. On top of that, there are certainly a number of typos and errata that's needed. There's certain rule omissions in the exclusive rules. And I think as Roar gamers, we're used to these types of things, but it does make you wonder if another 6 months would have led to a better overall product, less confusion from the players and buyers, and less people on the fence of deciding whether it was worth the investment. I think the second category around things that I wonder about for the system is the level of complexity, right? And I definitely know that from a design perspective that there's always going to be a challenge between complexity and detail. I think with Where Eagles Dare, given the situation on Hell's Highway, the units that were involved, and the amount of space that was available, I think that led to a very clean and quick gameplay experience. I've spent enough time with the Greatest Day to feel I can give a valid review, but I certainly wonder if a lot of the additions to gameplay, and a lot of the detail that certainly as a player I want, I do wonder what's going to happen when applying those rules to the campaign game, and is that going to become too much overhead for a player? Only time will tell, but you certainly see additional rules and additional complexity introduced into the system, or introduced into the exclusive rules, that you start to wonder, is it worth it? I have a lot of faith in the design team for the Greatest Day and the Grand Tactical series, but as someone who's played through the rules, it's certainly something that I wonder about. once we layer on Omaha and once we layer on Utah, does the level of complexity around the Greatest Day exclusive rules just become overwhelming? Can't say that that's the case yet, but it's a concern that I have, or a question that I have, as I see the series move forward. Having said all that, I don't think either one of those categories of concerns or questions should detract potential buyers from considering this product. The 2.0 transition can be worked out through living rules and printing up copies of the rules. The questions and concerns about perhaps too much rule overhead will come to light, and players will adapt to that. And certainly in my particular case, the more I play, the more I'm going to understand the rules and overcome any unfamiliarity that I have with them, which certainly could be the case, and really more a symptom of my concern rather than any type of defect with the system itself. So those concerns can be overcome. It doesn't take away from the fact that the Greatest Day is an outstanding package that represents a mature system. It represents the pinnacle of game design and game production. And I really encourage folks who are interested in D-Day and interested in the Grand Tactical Series, certainly go out and buy this game. The $200+ price tag may be a bit of concern, but the gameplay volume and quality more than makes up for it. And so there should be no concerns. You probably have a pile of unplayed games sitting on your shelves that certainly cost more than $200. So my recommendation, if you have those games, sell them, buy this one, get this one to the table. It's an excellent value for the money. The other thing I'll point out is that, if you have concerns about whether you have the space for this game, the Vassal module is outstanding for the Grand Tactical Series, and that extends over to the Greatest Day Vassal module. There are a lot of enhancements to that module compared to the one for Where Eagles Dare and the Devil's Cauldron, and it really makes it easy for players to get some of the larger scenarios to the virtual table. There's a great friendly GTS community who's willing to teach new players the system, and in this game in particular. So don't let the price tag, don't let the size, don't let either one of those stand in your way of giving this game good consideration. It's an outstanding package. I know I'll be playing this game at ComSim World this year. I'm also getting ready to start with a group for playing the campaign games via Vassal. So nothing's standing in the way of me getting this game to this table, and I would hope that nothing is standing in the way of you getting this game. Thanks for watching.